Today, I'm happy to bring to you a conversation I had with Ashley Gressen, who is a really tremendous person and a person with a tremendous resume as well. Um, Before I even get into introducing her, I just want to mention that I leave a little bit of conversation in this interview, which is not something I usually do. I usually cut myself out of it entirely, but there's a little back and forth that is interesting. And the more I think about it, the more, I don't know, hopefully it's interesting to you as well. But really, how we met was that I worked on a TV show called Lie to Me. That was on, I can't remember if it was Fox or CBS or one of those, one of the networks. But I worked with a girl named Ashley Mills, who was Ashley's roommate. I eventually jumped onto a documentary, which was a documentary about making the music video, This Too Shall Pass, with OK Go, which was that huge Rube Goldberg machine. That was a big video a few years back. In working on that, I brought Ashley Mills with me, and she said, "Hey, my roommate is a big fan of this band. Would she be able to come on aboard?" And we needed all the help we could get. This was such a huge undertaking. So I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Bring your other friend, who's also Ashley, on board." And of course, then so through that friend of a friend, Ashley comes aboard. She gets to work on that music video, This Too Shall Pass. And then she worked on multiple other videos with OK Go. So that little bit of an introduction ended up getting her more and more work. Now we jump ahead to modern day, and Ashley is working on The Mandalorian, among many other things. But she works on The Mandalorian, which her boss on that, Gary Marcus, was my boss on Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Also, the director of photography on that, David Klein, was my director of photography when I worked on a TV show called Flight 29 Down for 3 years. So it's very interesting. The world of production is fun. And every set you're ever able to be on, and I'm telling you, I know most of you are writers and you might not be as interested in the producing side, the actual production side, but realistically, if you can get on sets, take every opportunity to get on a set. Whether you are an extra in a movie or you are an additional PA on a big action day, the number of people that are on that set are all people that you want to get to know. And you can meet so many different people, and they interweave so much. I mean, I could do my 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon right there just from working on Lie to Me, which led to OK Go, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Flight 29 Down, and then that branches out to The Mandalorian, which I didn't work on that, but actually worked on that. And it's just this, it's so easy to build a network of connections when you do work in production and when you have friends that work in production. So I think that's, if nothing else, an interesting thing to take from this. And before I kick it off, I just have to say that if I had a modern day DVD collection of my favorite shows, they would almost be the Ashley Gressen collection, because she worked on Glow, she worked on Silicon Valley, she worked on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Basically, any show that I'm a fan of. I mean, Mad Men and on and on and on, and a lot of movies as well. And she's done one of the toughest things there is to do in this business, which is work as a PA long enough, collect your DGA days to be able to join the Directors Guild and then start working as an assistant director. That is extraordinarily admirable and takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness and grit and determination. And also, you have to honestly love the job you're doing. You're not going to make it if you don't love the job you're doing, and she quite clearly does. And just because she's made it into the Directors Guild doesn't mean she's on easy streak. She speaks very honestly and bluntly about the difficulties of being a newer person in the Directors Guild, and as many opportunities as might come up, there's probably even more hurdles in your way for the time being. And also, of course, we're just coming out of this long period where COVID took us back many steps, and then the strikes. And it's been a difficult time for making movies in Los Angeles, making movies anywhere. So Ashley does talk on that. Now, I do think brighter days are ahead. But in the meantime, just enjoy my conversation with Ashley.
I think I've always been really interested in film. I've just always really enjoyed it. I've always been really passionate about movies. And it's so nerdy, but I think the thing that really made me like want to work in film is when The Lord of the Rings came out. I was just really, it's funny because I really didn't want to see it at first because I was a stupid teenager. Like, I don't even know if I was a teenager when the first one came out yet. And so in my head, it was like, my dad wanted to see this movie. I didn't know it was related to The Hobbit. I don't know. Because I was like, I don't know what, like 12. And so I just by nature didn't want to see it because my dad wanted to see it. And then I went and then I made the connection while watching it and I was hooked instantly because I loved the cartoon from like the 70s of The Hobbit growing up. Watched it all the time as a kid. So I was like, why didn't you just pitch it to me like that? And it would have been a whole game changer. But yeah, I was hooked instantly, and then immediately like read all the books. And then when the DVD started coming out and they had all the behind the scenes features, I just was fascinated with it and was like, whoa, that's what I want to do for a living. Well, that's why I refuse to this day to get rid of my DVDs, because of the fact that with everything now being digital, you can buy all the movies you want. But if, say, you know, Amazon decides they want to get rid of Prime Video at any time, anything you've ever bought, you lose the rights to it. So I like having that physical copy. And for example, even like how only, I think just a couple of weeks or a couple months ago, Kevin Smith finally got the rights to Dogma back. And so for years and years and years, unless you had that DVD, you were SOL to try to watch the movie unless you could find like a ripped copy somewhere. So that's why I love having that still. Like every young girl in the 90s, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I don't know if it was just Lisa Frank or what with all the dolphins, and I don't know. But somehow it ended up transitioning from like, oh, I wanted to do that, to then I wanted to incorporate film into that, to then it just became film. And I'm still fascinated by the other stuff. But yeah, no, I never really did my own videos or anything like that. I just knew, I mean, I took a film class in high school, but it was very like analog, like had to spin the thing to like cut the footage together. You know, we didn't have any of that fancy, you know, like Final Cut Pro or anything like that, which then I learned in college. But yeah, no, I just always knew I wanted to be part of that process. And so then when it came to looking at schools, I, you know, started becoming more and more serious about wanting to do it. And so I just wanted to find a school that had a good film program. And that's how I ended up at Penn State. Yeah, they were. I think they still, to some degree, don't quite fully understand. But no, they were always very supportive, whether or not they thought I was actually going to be able to make a living out of it or not. I mean, with the state of the industry, who knows to this day? But we can talk about that in a little bit. Yeah, no, they were supportive. And my dad actually knew somebody through like coaching sports from like, I think it was somebody, my sister, her age. One of the dads had a film company, and my dad actually hooked me up with him, and I had a little internship with them for a couple of years throughout like high school. They did more kind of like safety videos and like some talking head interview kind of stuff. And so my first summer that I worked with them, I kind of was helping in the accounting office and just kind of general help around the office for the most part. But then I would do, you know, if there was like breaks from school, I'd work there. I just really liked the people. It was a small company nearby. And yeah, and then my last summer there, I worked in the equipment warehouse and was like helping log tapes and a little bit of checking in and out of equipment, but not too much of that. But yeah, it was just cool to kind of get like a little bit of a taste of it, even though it's very different. That was definitely more corporate side. But just seeing some of the stuff that they had done, I still was like, okay, cool. And I got to like witness a little bit, learn a little here and there, which just sort of solidified that I did want to do, go into film. I still ultimately would like to produce. Okay. And yeah, that I know, you know, a lot of people say like, go out, make your own content, which I do need to be better about. But yeah, it's kind of hard when, you know, everything sort of takes time and a budget, and then you sort of always either have one or the other. Yeah. So that's still kind of the ultimate goal. But in the meantime, I do like the track that I've been on. It's taking a very long time, but yeah, I do like ADing in the sense that I enjoy the aspect of the problem solving. And it's kind of all something about when you like get all the different pieces and like are able to finally like make that puzzle and put it all together, and then you can kind of see the bigger picture. Something about that's really gratifying, and I enjoy that aspect of it. Right out of college, I had wanted to originally move to Los Angeles like right away, and Penn State does a lot of emails through the School of Communications saying like, we have this internship opportunity or this is happening, which is how I ended up finding out about Unstoppable. But I had gotten emails about internship for like Scrubs in Cougar Town, but the problem was is I had already graduated and it was for credit only. So I turned to like what was it, Mandy.com and Craigslist and things like that, just to see if there was like anything that didn't sound sketchy. And I came across this one ad they were looking for help on a horror movie. And I was like, I don't know. But randomly enough, another friend of mine had actually already gotten involved in it. And she vouched for it. So I was like, okay. And I went and did that for it was just like 3 weeks. And then they had a break. And then they had like another 3 weeks. So I only did the first 3. It was a horror movie called Stakeland, which was directed by this guy, Jim Mickle, who then like years and years later, the show on Netflix, Sweet Tooth, he wrote and directed. And so when I was watching that, I was like, hey, wait, I literally stayed in his like childhood bedroom because that movie we shot was like on his parents' farm and like the surrounding area. And it was with like Connor Paolo and Danielle Harris was in it, and Kelly McGillis was in it. It was this like cool little weird take on a vampire movie. And that was my first one. And then while I was on that, I had gotten the email saying, hey, we're filming a movie in the Penn State area. We're looking for anybody who's interested, like submit a resume. And basically if you even had like a few cells going on up there, we sent them to the Keysat PA was one of the people, and he kind of like sorted through, and I went on board for that, and it was mostly just standing in driveways telling people they couldn't leave their driveway for several months because we locked up like 10 miles of road at one point. I think the most when we were out we had to like put ourselves up if we wanted to do it, but we went out to West Virginia and Ohio, like right on the border. And at one point there were like 110 PAs or something like that. Yeah, it was crazy. It was still probably one of like the weirdest. And it was kind of strange being like my first venture into like that first one. Stakeland was like a very small, probably like maybe 50-person crew kind of ordeal. Like in hindsight, that was tiny. Yeah. And so then going from that to then Unstoppable was just really ridiculous. And it was fun to be. I was kind of one of like ended up being like a core 25 people who ended up kind of working the most because that's what we wanted to do and made ourselves available. And it was really weird. We would like sometimes hop on a bus at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and then travel 2 to 3 hours to wherever we were shooting, get off at catering, have breakfast, and then just get dropped off along the side of the road. It was weird, but it was still, I look back on it, it was a fun experience. So we did that from, I want to say it was like September through, or like the end of August through like December-ish, 2009. And I had planned on then the next year, like solidified I was going to move to LA. And then some other people had also wanted to move out. And so they kind of pushed that timeline up. And so, I ended up moving out and moving in with actually the Keysat PA from the movie. His sister needed some roommates. And so I ended up moving out with a couple other people and lived with her for the first few months that I was out here. One of the very first things is where I met you was on that OK Go video, which I believe like Ashley Mills had somehow gotten put into contact with someone who was doing the shoot, and I knew the band, and I was a fan of OK Go, and so I was like, I don't even care if it's free, I just want to be there, I want to be a part of it. And so ask if they need extra help, and she did, and they did, so I did that. And then I actually went on to then do another, I think 2 videos with them after that. They were paying after that.
That's good. Yeah, End Love, I think, right?
It was there was End Love, and then back to Kathmandu.
I was working on the OK Go video, and they needed people, so I called her, and she, I think, worked on it for one day and said, like, hey, I've got a friend who's a big fan.
Yeah. I couldn't remember how that connection happened. That's really funny. I didn't realize it was through you.
Yeah.
I love that. There. I've had quite a few. It doesn't happen as often anymore, but there was a period of time where like almost every set was just like, I can't believe I'm being paid to do this. And every once in a while it still does happen. And I want to say probably one of the last ones was I did seasons 1 and 2 of Mandalorian and then Boba Fett. And I'll never forget season 1, day 1, after I believe we'd shot for the most part on the back lot. And then myself and one of the other PAs, my friend Jeff, both were like, let's go like take a look at the volume. So we quickly like snuck into the stage because they were doing some tests and stuff because we were gonna like getting up and running. And walking into that volume for the first time, and they had, you know, the Razor Crest cockpit in there, and then they had like hyperspeed going on the video in the volume, and just kind of seeing that moment was one of those times where you kind of just stop and you're like, what the fuck is my life? Holy, like, how am I here and doing this? And yeah, between that and then like day 1, they brought out the baby, and then so keeping that a secret for, you know, almost a year, because I think it started shooting, I want to say it was like in early October, and then it premiered, I want to say, or maybe it was the next November, so like a little over a year, something like that, keeping that baby a secret. So like just seeing all those kinds of things and getting to see the puppeteers and action, and just, it was a hard shoot, but particularly the first 2 seasons, like I just have such fond memories of it. Just, even though it was really hard and crazy, we all knew we were making something special, and it was really cool to be a part of that. And just even in my own small little way, just to like stop and realize like my name's forever in the credits, like a very, very tiny part of Star Wars history. Like, that's so cool to me. And I don't know, I would say that's probably like, you know, the last time. It's been, you know, not that I haven't enjoyed other sets or, you know, kind of had its moments, but that was kind of the one that just really like hit home of like, holy shit, I'm here. I hope Gary said something similar, because that's where I worked with him. That's where I met him. Well, one thing that I've kind of been trying to implement as I've been, you know, getting further and further into my ADing journey, particularly like the last few things that I've been firsting, is that, you know, there's a fine line between doing what needs necessary to keep the production moving along, but then also, you know, just making sure that every department has their time to kind of shine, and that you know, you don't want anyone to feel disrespected, because that's something that I see a lot on set, is that, you know, for example, G&E tells you they have about 45 minutes of lighting for the next piece, and, you know, no one really kind of necessarily bats an eye at that, because, you know, it takes what it takes. And you can do whatever you can to get the process going of, you know, a few minutes before, maybe 10 minutes beforehand, telling hair, makeup, like, and costumes, like, hey, if there's anything more than a last look you guys need to do, now's a great time for touch-ups. But then when you call them in, get the cast on the mark, and you call last looks, a lot of times they get shortchanged in that aspect. And they feel rushed, or like people are trying to start calling rolling before they've even stepped out. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, if somebody's taking, like, sure, you know, excessive time, but at the same time, they're there to help make the actor or actress look as best as possible, or whatever is necessary for the scene. And, you know, if they don't get that time, and then all of a sudden they see the footage later on and something's not right, either it could be a big problem with continuity, or if, you know, if it happens to, you know, slip by scripty, or if the actor is not happy with the way that they look on camera, like, there's so many other things, by just not giving them that extra 20 seconds. And so I think that's a big thing that, you know, any set that I'm ever on, no matter the capacity, I just want to make sure that all departments feel respected and that they're able to do their job. That's what they're there for. They're there for a reason. And, you know, I always say that working in film is kind of like being a part of a sports team, in the sense that every single person has their position. They have a role to play. And, you know, you take away that one role and you're a man short. Like, that it doesn't work unless you have all the pieces in place. And so I really, it's It is. It's a team activity, you know? And that's why you get to have these little families. And I don't know, I like that aspect of it. And I think when people feel respected and like they're there to do a good job and they're given the opportunity to do so, everyone's going to work a lot harder for you. And you know, you're going to have a much better time on set for 15 hours a day when everyone at least is enjoying what they're doing and feels like they're given their opportunity to do what they do best. Yeah, actually, all of them did. So Rob, Charlie, and Glenn have a thing on set, at least when I was there, I'm assuming they still do, that whenever if there's like a scene or something that they're, you know, not in, like one of the other guys will like step up and be there to act as like the executive producer. So if like there's a scene with just, you know, Rob, Charlie, and Dee, and then, you know, Glenn's not a part of it, he still wants to be there to like EP it unless the other guys are like, no, you're good to go or whatever. Or if there's a scene with just like Dee and Frank, you know, one of the three of them always like want to be there and be invited to set to make sure they're like kind of overseeing everything. So like all three of them are very involved in that process. There was a day where David Hornsby, who plays Rickety Cricket on the show, he's also one of the writers, was gearing up, and he asked if I would like run some lines with him for, it was like I forget what the episode was, where he had the girlfriend and it goes through like Cricket's day and then you find out the girlfriend's the dog. He was really not looking forward to shooting him kissing the dog. There was like a whole thing about how they were going to put like peanut butter in his mouth and all this other stuff. And he just kind of, I was going through the lines with him, and he was kind of then just like, oh, I really don't want to do this and that. And then I stopped him and was like, David, you wrote this episode. And he's like, I know. I don't know why I did this to myself. And just that moment, I just think is so funny because he just was like so grossed out. And they did dial it back a lot from what was scripted. But yeah, just that moment of like, your name is literally written by David Hornsby for this episode. So like, you can't blame anybody except yourself. And I just really, I don't know, to me, that was just a really funny moment of like that, like, I know, but why? I don't know. Just the things that they do, that they get away with is always really just surprising. And it was one of the most fun jobs I've ever had. That I did 4 seasons with them, and I do miss working on it. I was talking to somebody about it like last week, how much some of the locations guys I had just worked with, we'd stopped each other in the office and we're like, hey. But yeah, I was like, how much I missed that show. I've actually been in the DGA for quite a while. That I turned my book in my PA days in like, I want to say it was like 2016, and was accepted into like 3rd area. But then what happened after that was, you know, it started getting a little bit of work here and there. It just makes you like union eligible. But in 2018, I was offered a job on a Facebook show called Sorry for Your Loss, which they didn't know exactly. It was new media, so they didn't know which direction they were going to go with it. And some people fought to get me on to run base camp as the additional AD. And I ended up doing that for 2 seasons. But the issue is that because it's new media, even though it's high budget, those days don't count. They would count now, but apparently they won't count retroactively. But because of the fact that I became a must join by taking that job, which means you work, I believe it's 30 consecutive days, like including weekends. So, you know, you get a job for a month and they force you to join. And so I had to join, or I was going to have to give up a 3 or 4 month job. And so I joined, but what I didn't necessarily at that time realize the ramifications of joining completely then locked me out from being able to take any non-union work. I'm limited to just being able to take like tier 2, kind of like that. I think it's like 2.5 million and under jobs. And yeah, and even then there's like a lot of different requirements as far as like time constraints. If something's too short, it doesn't count. And so I've kind of pigeonholed myself accidentally into this really tough area, which is why I'm still stuck in third area. Just because I can take full scale work, but it either has to be like a distant hire situation, or I have LA as my production center and then I have Philadelphia as my local. Where I was able to do a little bit there. I did the movie Hustle, the Adam Sandler movie. I was able to do there. And then, yeah, so it just makes it very hard. And especially like post COVID, you know, that sucked because everything shut down. And then there was this boom afterwards, which was great. I did a show called Your Honor where I ran base camp in LA as the PA, but every time we went to New Orleans, I got to upgrade to the additional running base camp. So that was great. But then all of a sudden, it just came to such a halt. And so, yeah, it's just been really, really slow. And so it's just trying to advance at this glacial pace. And I actually did like a count. I have to do like sit and organize the paperwork. But yeah, if they would count all my days, I'm over the number, but I don't think they're going to count like about 130 of them, something like that. So I still have a ways to go, but we'll see.
Give you like a next bump to
then I can, yeah, then I can work on anything. Like I've gotten offers to second jobs here in LA, but I've had to turn them down because I'm not qualified enough because I don't have the days, which sucks because you're the ones who won't take the days. Even though, you know, the show that made me the Mustjoy, and we shot it at CBS Radford. It was starring Elizabeth Olsen and like Janet McTeer, Kelly Marie Tran. Like it was a full-on show. It just happened to air on Facebook. And so, yeah, it's just, I remember I called the DGA at one point, and the guy who was the head of it for a long time, Steve Knaus, who's passed away a couple of years ago, I called him to ask about going FICOR. And which, of course, they like naturally discouraged me from doing, which I still might do, just because that way, at least, you know, I would have to repay the initiation fee, which really would suck. It's another like $7,000 or something. But at least then it would open me up to the possibility of being able to take non-union work, and those days still count. So still might do that. But I remember I called him and he pulled up my file and his response was, oof. I was like, cool. Thank you. That's just what I want to hear. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but you know, I'm happy at this point in time just to even be working at all. So yeah, even though I still take BA work, I'm thankful for that because a lot of people aren't in that position still. Don't, you know, they've had to take jobs as waiters or bartenders or just, you know, driving lifts, whatever they can do to get by. And I'm very thankful that it hasn't gotten to that point yet for me. Making sure you have a good team lined up who really knows what they're doing. But I would say that, you know, if you have other friends who are having productions be made and you're able to swing by the set just to get, especially if you've never been on a set before, just to understand the scope of what that's like and what that entails, even if you only swing by for like an hour, I think that could be beneficial because then at least you can kind of start to wrap your head around what may or may not be feasible within your script. How, you know, you might be able to dial things back. It's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to have the budget to have this giant space odyssey or whatever it may be. That maybe we set it on Earth instead. You know, so I would say just do as much research as you can. Make sure you surround yourself with a really good team. And even though, you know, I said earlier that time, it's a matter of always finding time and budget. But if you have the means to go out and make it yourself, absolutely do it. I have friends who do it all the time, and I've helped on those projects with them. And I need to sometimes just take my own advice and try to just make it happen.